I'm going to show you some simple techniques to make a gradient watercolor painting. We're going to be using Utrecht indigo blue watercolor on a 300-pound hot press paper. I'm going to show you how to make a variety of washes, stretch your paper, and apply them so that your colors don't get runny. Let's start by stretching our watercolor paper. Whatever surface you're working on with watercolor paper, just be sure to tape it down on all sides. I'm going to use 1/2-inch foam core board as a temporary watercolor stretching surface. Use the low-tack painter's tape to create a 1-inch border on all sides. Sketch your mountains as lightly as possible using an H pencil. Remember that mountains have lots of natural edges. Try to work that into your sketch. Also draw in the area where you want to paint your trees. You can just represent that area with some abstract rolling hills. Keep your drawing nice and light so that it doesn't show through your watercolor. Let's start this painting by making a couple of washes using indigo blue. So I'm just going to set this aside so we can focus on mixing our color washes. Each wash needs to have a different amount of paint added to it. Let's start by making the lightest wash possible. I'm just going to use a dab of color. I'm going to fill the rest of the well with water. I like to use a dropper because it makes transferring water easy and clean. I want this wash to be really diluted, so I'm going to add a lot of water. Next, mix it around with your watercolor brush. Let's make our second color wash stronger than the first. So use a little more paint, take your dropper, and add water. In your second wash, try to use the same amount of water as you did in the first pan. Make sure that your wash is totally mixed by scooping it up off of the bottom and mixing it in with the water. Let's test this wash underneath the first. Let's keep going, making even stronger color washes. And again, add your water. I want to show you this quick wet and wet technique. So while your color is still wet, get more color on the tip of your brush and drop it into that wet surface and see how dark you can get that color to go. Okay, we're going to make one final wash that's the darkest, and we're going to use 3 times the amount of color that we did in the last 2 pans. And we're also going to add just a touch of ivory black. Add the same amount of water. It's always nice to choose a palette where you can mix your colors and have a couple of extra spaces in case you need to make more. Now let's put these washes to work. Let's start with our lightest wash. Load up your watercolor brush. A good watercolor brush will hold lots of water, like this size 10 round. Start by sweeping in your color from the side. Try to avoid the edges until very last and work a little quickly without rushing. Try to stay in the lines as much as possible and don't flood your paper with too much color. Work all the way to the other side and then go over your edges with the point of your brush. Follow along tightly to your sketch. We want our color to dry all together in one layer, so try to keep everything wet and moving. Now that we've painted on our first layer, let's let it dry before we do any more details or color washes. Now that that top layer is dry, let's clean up the edge a little bit using the tip of our brush and a little bit of that light wash. Very subtly clean up your edges and unify the top of the mountain. Try holding your brush straight up and down so you can get a really nice point. Let's start using our second color wash. This one's a little bit darker than the first one we made. Notice we're just going to paint this small chunk of the mountain. Load up that brush and come in from the side. Keep your brush strokes loose and keep your surface working and wet. Use plenty of color, but don't flood your surface. Let's paint our last stretch of the mountain just before we work our way into the trees that are in the foreground. Using the next darkest wash, load up your brush and fill in this area that runs below both mountains. When you want your color wash a little bit darker, remember that wet into wet technique that we practiced at the very beginning. Drop in a little extra color where you want it to be nice and dark. Dip your brush in a little bit of water and run it along that wet color and watch it spread. Now let's use the same color to paint the foreground where our trees are going to go. This is the first layer of trees that are slightly lighter than the ones that will go in the foreground. Try to leave a little bit of white right in the center to indicate a highlight. Use that wet into wet technique to make this layer even darker. Now let's start painting trees. Use the tip of your brush and start to make lines that run along the mountain range, straight up and down. Connect the line to your bottom wet layer and let it run. Now let's add some branches. Work loose and add those branches onto your trees, going in different directions. Try not to create too many puddles. To get a lot of detail, clean your brush out and use the very tip to make the smallest branches. Run your brush side to side and up and down. Let the wet layers run together. Keep painting loose, big brush strokes that overlap. Let's add one final layer and get our trees into the foreground with the darkest color wash. Load up your brush and lay the wash into your only remaining white space. Apply a liberal amount of this color wash so that it's nice and dark. You want your trees to show up against the blue right above it. Add in more color to make this foreground layer nice and dark. Now start painting your trees. Use the same technique and draw lines. Try to paint a variety of different sized tree trunks. Let them overlap the first trees you painted. That way it'll help show depth. Make sure your tree trunks connect to the wet wash on the bottom of the paper. Now go back in with those loose, big brush strokes and paint your branches. Now that you've painted your foreground layer, let it dry completely while it's still taped down before removing it. To help wrap up this painting, feel free to add even more darker layers in the foreground until it's as dark as you want it to be. Now it's time to unmask this watercolor painting. Let's slowly remove the masking tape. Now your painting's all done. Look at this beautiful deckled edge from the 300-pound watercolor paper we used. Don't forget to get a frame for your painting and hang it up in your space.